Okay, this is the test for review. The inverse sign means where's the y value equal to 1/2. And for positives, we always use quadrant 1, so that's pi over 6. Part B, the inverse sign of negative 1/2, that's the y value, and that happens at 11 pi over 6 and 7 pi over 6. We use the quadrant 4, but we call that negative pi over 6. So the inverse sign, your answers always have to be between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. The inverse cosine of 1/2, that's where the x equals 1/2, and we always use quadrant 1. So that's pi over 3. Part D, the inverse cosine of negative 1/2. That happens, our negatives for inverse cosine, we use quadrant 2, so that's 2 pi over 3. Okay, E and F are inverse tangents. Tangent is y divided by x. So over there on the right side, I showed the two divisions that give us each of the tangent values. So part E, the inverse tangent is the square root of 3. That is when the y divided by the x equals square root of 3. And that happens at pi over 3. Tangent is y over x. Part F, the inverse tangent of negative square root of 3 over 3. The division over there to our right gives us the correct division. Negative 1/2 divided by square root of 3 over 2. The inverse tangent, we always use quadrant 4 for the negatives, but we call it the negative angle. So that is negative pi over 6. Number 2, find the tangent of the arc sine. The arc sine means the angle, so we're going to call arc sine equal to theta. That means angle theta has a sine value of x over 2. So that means our triangle has the opposite side x and the hypotenuse side 2. So that gives us our triangle. I'm going to call A that other side. We can use the Pythagorean formula to solve for that side to get an expression for that side. We're finding the tangent of arc sine. The arc sine is theta, and the tangent of theta is the opposite over adjacent. So the opposite side over the adjacent side is the tangent of theta. Graph 2 cosine. So the 2 in front of the word cosine is the amplitude. The period is 2 pi divided by the number in front of t. The start is the opposite sign of the last number divided by the first number in the parentheses. So that gives us negative pi over 8. The midline is the plus 1 number at the end. Okay, so there in the middle, it says end, and I have negative pi over 8 plus pi over 2. That's finding the last angle. So negative pi over 8 is the first angle. The period we found to be pi over 2, and that means the length from the beginning to the end. So that gives us the 3 pi over 8. A 2 cosine value would be 2, 0, negative 2, 0, 2. But it's being shifted up 1, so we do plus 1 to all of those numbers, and that gives us our graph there to the right. Okay, graph 1 period of negative 2 sine. The 2 in front of sine is our amplitude. The period is 2 pi divided by the number that's in front of t, so 2 pi divided by 2 is pi. The midline is the minus 1 number at the end. That means everything's being shifted down 1. And we're starting at the opposite sign of what's inside the parentheses, the last number divided by the first number. So pi over 2 divided by 2 is pi over 4. Okay, in the middle there, it says end. It starts at pi over 4 plus a period length of pi gives us our last angle is 5 pi over 4. A -2 cosine would go 0, -2, 0, 2, 0. Everything is being shifted down 1, so -1. And that gives us our graph, our angles, and our heights. Okay, given the sine and given the quadrant, so between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, it will be quadrant 4. Find the secant, part A. The secant is 1 over the cosine. So we can use the Pythagorean identity, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. We square the -3 over 7, and then we solve for cosine squared by subtracting on both sides. Solve for cosine by taking the square root. The square root of 40 simplifies to 2 root 10. The square root of 49 is 7. When we take the square root, it can be plus or minus. So the quadrant 4 tells us that x is positive because it's to the right, so the cosine is positive. The secant is 1 over the cosine, so we just flip the cosine to get the secant. Part B, the cosine of -x is the same as the cosine of x. We can see that if we look at to see what angle x and angle -x mean. Angle x means go up, angle -x means go down. So you can see that those two angles would have the same cosine because the cosine is x and they're both to the right. So the cosine of -x is just equal to the cosine from part A. The part C, the sine of -x, we can look to see positive x angle means go up, negative x angle means go down. So those x's there in the circle mean angle x, not the coordinate part x. So we can see that one of them's up, one of them's down. So the sine of -x will be the opposite of the sine. So the sine of -x, that is the opposite of -3/7, which is 3/7. The cosine of 2x, we just use the formula that it is equal to 2 cosine squared minus 1. So we take our cosine of x that we found earlier and square it and subtract 1. So find the sine of 2x is 2 times the sine of x times the cosine of x. So we multiply, we plug in those numbers from before and multiply that out. The cosine of x plus pi over 3, we use our cosine of a plus b formula. We do cosine, cosine, and then minus sine, sine. We plug in sine and cosine from the previous parts. Cosine and sine of pi over 3 comes from our circle. And multiply those fractions. Find the sine of x plus pi over 2. The sine formula is sine of the first, cosine of the second, plus cosine of the first times sine of the second. We plug in the sine and cosine from the earlier parts, and cosine and sine of pi over 2 come from the circle. Find all solutions. It's a quadratic, so we need it set equal to 0, so we add 1. Then we factor. We set each factor equal to 0. So we get 2 sine x plus 1 equals 0. Solve for sine. Find where the sine equals -1/2. That's 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. On the right, set 3 sine x plus 1 equal to 0, subtract and divide. Now that's not something on our circle, so we just call that the inverse sine because inverse sine means the angle that has a sine value of that. Okay, the plus 2 pi k is because of the full circle rotations that would also give us the same answer, those coterminal. Number 7, first thing to do is going to be to FOIL. So first, secant times 1 is secant. Outside, secant times negative sine is negative secant sine. Inside is tangent times 1 is tangent. Last is tangent times negative sine. Next, we rewrite everything in terms of its relation to sine or cosine. Secant is 1 over cosine. Secant times sine would be 1 over cosine times sine. So that would be sine over cosine. Plus tangent, tangent is sine over cosine. Minus tangent sine, tangent is sine over cosine, and then times that sine. So the minus sine over cosine plus equals 0. We get 1 over cosine minus sine times sine is sine squared. They're both over cosine, so we can make it one combined fraction. 1 minus sine squared equals cosine squared because of the Pythagorean identity sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Cosine squared divided by cosine equals the cosine, which is what we were trying to show. And that's the end.